Good day and welcome to Press Hour on this Sunday, the 22nd of July. Much has happened since we last met, and you know, one of the things which we discussed in one of our last programs was the World Cup, and it has produced an unexpected champion. None of us on the stage, I hope Geoff Ngwa, Fonicheki, and the host of other sports analysts will certainly bear with me or agree with me that we never saw France coming. And in a tournament, you hardly can put your finger on the one that will win. Sometimes it happens, but not often. We'll touch a little bit on the surprised winners of the World Cup and the National Festival of Arts and Culture, which just wrapped up in Bedouin. But we'll focus on the presidential election that will be taking place on the 7th of October this year. To do that with me on this midday program today, we have from my left to my right, Barrister Baka Enes. You're welcome.
Thank you, Joe.
There is Dr. Sue Nobe. He is a constitutional law expert and political science scientist and a researcher. There is Barrister Mujem Fambat. Yeah. You're welcome.
Thank you.
And the publisher of the Guardian Post, Christian.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Okay. I'd like us to set the ball rolling with what the papers were writing this week. Our press review. Emmanuel Avemnu.
The submission of files for the October 7 presidential polls made headline news in most newspapers this week. Cameroon Tribune on its Monday edition headlines, Paul Biya makes his intentions known. It talks about the tweet of the chairman of the CPDM to run for another 7-year mandate. This decision to the Post newspaper is what it terms Biya hits the people's call, then goes further on its weekend edition to report of the political storm that gathers as 12 candidates deposits files at Elekam. The number of course has risen to 28 as at today. The median is rather satiric, questioning, as Biya goes for 7, who can stop the old fox? But Newswatch puts to the fore the UDP chair's observation. The paper quotes El Haj Lawan Bako as saying that Cameroon without Biya would be worse than South Sudan. As the Voice newspaper asks, 2018 election, Paul Biya until 2025, the Guardian Post rather announces that Bernard Njongang is heading boycott campaign as government gambles with solution to Anglophone crisis. The same paper reports that an Anglophone detainee and mechanic, Bertin Kisop, of the Cameroon Party for Social Justice is said to challenge Biya at the 2018 elections. Away from politics, the ongoing socio-political upheavals in the northwest and southwest regions continue to make cry many families. The Voice reports on killings in Bambili headlining drama in Bamenda mortuary. According to the paper, the body of Berili Kari, a University of Bamenda student, was after thorough search by family members in different police stations, finally found in the mortuary of the Bamenda General Hospital. The Guardian Post reports of gunmen who beheaded a policeman in Womb, while reporting at the same time on women that have turned into grave diggers to bury killed relatives as men has escaped the villages due to gun battles. But the median reports of a complete sad week for Northwest, with B soldiers said to have killed 21 civilians in Batibo and Bambili. The Post Weekender questions, who killed Miss Bright's hotel proprietor? The paper reports that gunmen had which it says after Kumba Ambazonian separatists ambushed Defense Minister's convoy in Batibo. The National Festival of Arts and Culture, FENAC, bringing to the spotlight the rich cultural heritage of the 10 regions of Cameroon in Bedouin, East region of Cameroon, also occupied a good chunk of newspaper columns this week. Cameroon Tribune portrays the diversity from music to dance and outfit. The outbreak of the cholera epidemic in 4 regions of Cameroon, the north, the far north, the littoral and central regions, preoccupy health experts with crisis meetings holding here and there. The visit to Cameroon of the AU chair, Faki Mahamat, and that of the Grand Master of the Sovereign Order of Malta are also reported by the different newspapers. The Green Reporter draws the attention of its readers to the research finding of Red List that 26 global species of animals are under threats of extinction, while announcing that 5 African countries have created information exchange to combat wildlife trafficking. We end our press review on this frontline story on the Guardian Post that Alassane Ouattara, president of Côte d'Ivoire, has set an example for old and sit-tight African leaders by announcing he will step down in 2020 and hand over power to the younger generation. Until we meet again, have an hour with the press.
Thank you, Emanuela. I'd like to begin with you, Christian. Did you see France coming at the World Cup? It's a surprise like to many others.
Well, maybe because I was a supporter of the French team, I would really not say that that winning the trophy was a surprise to me. If you look at the selection of players from every other African country, that was already a sign that France was ready to, because you know about 60 or 70% of their players are from different African countries. So they went for the best players in the different African countries, and so.
Does that guarantee success?
Of course. It was one country in about, I mean, there were 2, I would say there was Africa and part of Europe that won the World Cup.
That sounds cynical somehow.
I think from my own perspective, I think the H factor is what they played in favor of France, because if you watch all the matches, all those teams that brought old players, they had real difficulties. So I think that it is due to the fact that the French team kind of brought in a younger squad,
juvenated
squad. I think that is what actually played in favor of France. That's actually what contributed to the victory by the French. I want to
if you say that, others might ask, what about Nigeria that had the youngest team at the tournament?
We know that when you watch Nigeria play, it's a promising team. Nigeria, I can say that it is by a stroke of ill luck that Nigeria found themselves where they are, but they were a team that were really vibrant. Nigeria has a squad that I think is very promising, and I'm sure if they maintain this team, the next World Cup, they are going to go far.
Hopefully too. Nobe, are you a football fan?
Yeah, of course, more or less anyway, but I most watch football when, of course, our national team is playing. What I have to say is that the success of France might not really be a surprise, because when we watched the initial games, we had the impression that, I particularly had the impression that this team was going to go a little bit far, and on some occasions I even had to go by betting to make sure that France wins.
That sounds interesting.
Yeah, but whatever the case, I feel that this is a kind of testimony of the success of unity in diversity. So why would France, a mixture of, you know, players from various different origins, make it up? So
isn't that the triumph of the spirit of tolerance?
Well, we talk of. I want to say that
others' culture, they welcome each other. You judge you based on your talents and your performance and your abilities.
Good. It is the success of the spirit of competence and tolerance, as you're saying.
Barrister Mojam says living together.
The impression is that bringing people from diverse backgrounds together can make it work. So at least that is a lesson that I retain from the success of France.
Okay.
Yes, I think that to keep up with what Barrister Fombart said, the youthfulness of the team played a great role, and equally the video-assisted refereeing this time around helped the referees to correct some of the errors that would have been that we used to experience in the past, where
many people say they did not live up to expectation.
Well, I don't think so. I think it helped a lot to me from my appreciation. I think that helped this World Cup a lot, and that's why some of those teams that we didn't expect had the opportunity of coming up, because mistakes were, it used to happen that a big player will just fall, simulate, and a penalty will be given and things like that in the past. This time around, it wasn't easy because the video will help.
Did it surprise you that little Croatia got to the final and that big names dropped well down there?
No, I think Croatia, if you look at their players, in terms of the clubs they play for, you could see Modric. He's a winner of the Champions League this year, and most of their players play in big teams in Europe. So, I mean, I already said it on this program that I saw Croatia coming, even though I didn't expect to see them at the finals. So, where they got to, even though they did win the trophy, to me, they did so well. But again, one thing I want to say is that the combination of the French team should be a lesson and an eye-opener to some of the big countries who think that they can only depend on their nationals to make something happen.
Sure.
Okay. Why not small countries like us?
Of course.
Why can't we get star players from our neighboring countries and build a national?
Joe, I'm saying so because we have the tendency where some countries, either in Europe or in America, for instance, they've restricted the visa. They have made the visa procedure very difficult, especially for African countries. And I'm saying that they can now just see that some of the people you are turning away. We saw a Malian, what he did in France to rescue a baby. And so I'm saying that it should...
You're moving away from football.
No, it is part of it. I'm saying that some of the big countries will know that Africans have something to offer.
Yes.
They're not just coming to take their jobs.
Going to Croatia and going to Croatia before I come back to the situation of Cameroon, I think the Croatian team, we found them very, very technical. It was a collection of strong and determined players. It was not a surprise to me that they went that far, because when I watched their first match, I suspected that team was going to go far. Then coming to Cameroon with regards...
You didn't say it to anybody?
Well, I didn't say it to anybody. I had it in me. Well, the few friends who shared a drink, I didn't hesitate, indicating that I'm suspecting Croatia to go very far. With regards to Cameroon, it's true, we say we can also build a national team by collecting players from neighboring countries. I think we should even first make the playing ground level attractive for our own nationals to make sure they play with us. Because in the French national team that won the World Cup, we have 2 players inside. So we have to make the enabling environment to attract first of all our Cameroon, our nationals. Then we'll look at the possibility of bringing in foreigners to boost up.
Okay. You did make mention here about the idea of that French team bringing together African countries, and that it was some sort of living together, quote and unquote. And we had this National Festival of Arts and Culture, the 9th edition in Betwa, and so much was said about culture. How does that build national cohesion? How can that contribute?
I think that we have Cameroon, we are a blessed country, but I think that because, I'm sure because nature has given everything to us, and we don't know how to get attract the advantages from those things. From our cultural diversity, we are supposed to be the main focal point of touristic attraction in Africa. We are supposed to be. We are supposed to harmonize these cultures and put them together instead of diverting. We are supposed to have these cultures in a convergent way to be able to expose to the world our cultural diversity. That's what tourists will want to see. They want to go to a place where in one point they can be able to have an experience of several cultures. We have that potential, but we're not making use of it.
Norbert?
Well, I think that our cultural diversity should be considered as an asset rather than a liability. Well, the Festival of Arts and Culture is one of the national, I would say, national display of our diversity in terms of, cultural presentations, dances, and all of that. So usually when people from various backgrounds come together and project what they have that is specific about them, tends to merge up with what others have.
The criticism which some people level against what the ongoing festival is that the same groups come up each time, and that within a certain region or a certain division, you have other small subgroups which might eventually disappear because the bigger groups keep representing them each time you have such an event. So what if you were in the Ministry of Arts and Culture, how would you respond to that?
I'll encourage competition. It's not. It's a display where we intend to pick out the best. So definitely, if the well, I don't know which group is small, which group is big, but if the smaller group in quotes is being submerged by the bigger group, it means that the smaller group still has a lot to do when it comes to cultural presentations and all of that. And consequently, when you feel that you have a lot to do, it puts you at work somehow. So I want to think that the cultural diversity or the festival that was organized is one among others. It's just like a football game. You know, they don't select players for the sake of selection. They don't select because they want to meet up with equality, because they want to meet up with human rights, because they want to meet up with democracy or whatsoever. I think that the spirit of competition in cultural aspects should be really, really encouraged and, of course, reinforced.
Now, others would observe that if you put competition in cultural, in the cultural domain, you are bound to kill some cultures, because not every culture would be as attractive as some, but each one is supposed to exist.
Yes,
right.
We know that culture is, at least within the political spectrum, we know that culture has a symbolic dimension, therefore. Now, if that is what we want, if we want culture for the sake of representation, then it will be interesting to bring in all cultures, big or smaller ones. That's why I'm saying that by even qualifying cultures as big, as small, I think that is a value judgment that does not really hold, because each culture is specific to a group of or a community of people, and it will be interesting. And we also need to even find out deeply whether the smaller groups or those who were not represented, why were they not represented, and so on. Is there any bias, for example, for the Ministry of Culture to decide to select particular groups for cultural displays and not others? If that is the case, then why is it so? So for purpose of cultural symbolism and representation, it'll be interesting for other cultures to be represented in such a festival, whatever the case.
We are talking about national cohesion, building a nation through culture. In a country with over 250 ethnic groups, I will shock you, it becomes very difficult to build a cohesion, because each struggles to keep its identity. Because if you talk about a nation and cohesion, you talk about identity and uniqueness. And it becomes very difficult to bring together these traditions and culture together to form a unique identity. I think that it is in that light that I support the effort of the Ministry of Culture to bring together these various cultures together to see how they can, by mixing and coming together, they can try to push the cultures that can give us a national identity. It is in that light that I think that we can pardon them when it comes to selecting regularly some cultures, because we are struggling now in that light to project a particular culture and an identity. So if you go back to taking all the other cultures and from the other areas, it becomes difficult to give us an identity. I think it is in that line, and all of that is because of the so many cultures we find ourselves in our country, because of the various ethnic groups.
Okay, we'll have time to...
Joe, I think I want to disagree sharply with what Metro is just saying. I covered the FENAC in Marwa. That's about 10 years ago. And if you look at the representation that you had in Betua, they are just virtually the same names, which means that we are not growing. It's either we are not growing in terms of our cultural diversity, or the committee in charge of selection is not doing any work. We just go back to the register and look at the old names. And you are asking about what can be done. I think if the Ministry of Culture, they really want to succeed in their mission of showcasing our rich cultural identity or diversity, they should at least they have divisional representation. They should start from the divisional levels and select people who come to the national level, no matter how they will do it. Because you cannot keep seeing the same name, Manendo Bango, Ndede Yango, Tribute Sisters, every year.
What of cultural groups?
That's what I'm saying. I'm talking about names that for the past almost a
These
decade.
are musicians who, who have become
what about those
famous.
What about those who famous? We're not saying that they should be kept aside, but we have budding artists in our various localities. Are you saying that because they have not gotten to the international scene?
Those are individuals. I'm talking about cultural groups.
Then we start all of that. All of that. I said we should go down to the divisional levels. Select the best cultural groups or the musicians, whatever.
Not only the best, because if you talk about best here, it means that others will always be sidelined.
No, what I said best from the divisional level, Joe, because that is the criteria they used in selecting those who go for the national FNAC. They don't just pick people from the street. At least you should attain a certain level. But how do you get to that level if you have never been selected?
That's the question I'm asking. Okay,
but I think
since there's no official from the Ministry of Culture here,
so.
I'd like us to rest that topic and move on to our focus this midday, which has to do with the presidential election. And let's have the speaker on the activity at Elections Cameroon and the build-up to the presidential election in this report.
It was at 4:30 p.m. that the fever which announces the arrival of an important personality gripped Ileka. Then came the youngest aspiring candidate for the 2018 presidential election, 38-year-old Cabral Libi of the Universe Party. The mobilization at the fire submission phase was unprecedented. The identification, registration and reception procedure took its course. His challenge was to raise 30 million CFA francs deposit required.
I have never had such an amount in my account. So with the participation of the population, I have done it.
Jean-Blaise Guet of MPCC, Vincent Sosten Fouda, an independent candidate, and Gabamina Regobert, another independent candidate, submitted on the heels of Cabral Libi. Before the Universe Party commotion, it was a day at Elections Cameroon that comes only once in 7 years under normal circumstances. The deadline for the submission of files for presidential candidates. There was a general mobilization, and the press has taken special measures to capture every image. Cameras and microphones positioned at every strategic angle. The wait till midnight was programmed to be long, and Elecam from time to time energized the body and boosted the morale of the pressmen and women with snacks. Sustained curiosity found favor at midday with the arrival of two candidates, Antoine Depadou Ndemanu of RDPF Party and Edouard Barin Kula, an independent candidate. By 6 p.m. Thursday, July the 19th, 20 political party nominees and independent candidates were already enlisted at the Directorate General of Elecam for the October the 7th, 2018 presidential poll.
Well, Kilian is talking about 6, 7 p.m., but at midnight, when the date or time expired, 28 individuals had submitted their files at Elections Cameroon, be it at the national or put together. That's why the figure rises up to 28. Are there names there that surprise you?
Yeah, when you look at the, I did not expect, for instance, Damjoya to show up again.
Okay.
I think that there's nobody, there's nothing that surprised me, because I think that everybody has a right to stand for presidential elections. And like we're criticizing culture, we don't need to be having the same people all the time. So we should also think of having new faces at some times.
Okay. Now there, Doctor?
There's also an aspect of diversity we have just been talking about, because when we see new candidates coming in. But what I want to say is that, the proportion, we are just looking at those who have been able to submit their files successfully. Mm-hmm. But when we look at the proportion of this number compared to the general number we would have been expecting, close to 300 political parties, then we begin to see that it's even very, very minimal.
Okay.
I'm surprised by some names because, to be honest with you, I got some names for the first time when I heard that they deposited their candidacies, and some of them, those independent candidates, to be honest with you, I've never heard of them.
Now, are they, do you have some absentees whom you would have expected their names, or that they should submit their files at Elekam?
Yes, of course.
Notable absentees?
Notable absent, like Bello Buba. One would have expected him to come up. Well, for Frundi, he already handed over to OC, so I think that Bello Buba.
Well, in reality, I don't expect, he talked about Bello Buba, but when we look at the political trajectory of Bello Buba, we begin to understand that it's more or less normal for him to be absent or not to present his candidacy, because he had, kind of indirectly, sometimes directly, even rallied behind the incumbent. So it's just normal. We can line him up with those who declare their support open for the ruling party.
Okay. Any notable absentee?
For me, I won't really place a finger on any notable absentee, but my disappointment is the fact that we don't have many young candidates coming in, because I think that it is clear we need to start thinking
38,
of...
doesn't that...
yeah, we have a candidate at 30. We should have more young candidates. We should have many more younger candidates than having older people, because I think that we all agree that we need to rejuvenate our democracy.
But the amount attached to it, the deposit.
Yes, the financial aspect might be plain, and I think it was for on purpose that the government put that amount, so that if you want to come up for presidential election, you should really be prepared. Yes, the law. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the law is kind of trying to make it such that if somebody wants to come up for presidential election, the person should be ready and should be serious.
Okay.
Yeah, I think before I talk about the name that I expected, I think it's not
absentee.
Yeah, it should be very clear that not all the 28 who submitted handed in the receipt of 30 million. We have to be clear about that.
We haven't yet had.
No, I'm giving you. I think that's a fact.
That's all right. Let's now go.
So, but I'm saying that I would have loved to see Bernard Nyonga. Unfortunately, he backed out.
Okay. Now, what does the law say about who qualifies?
A candidate that has a seat in the parliament, that has councillors, can be sent in by the political party. No, such a political party can send in a candidate, and an independent candidate can come in on condition that he secures 300 signatories from the 10 regions, 30 signatories from each region, and those who are qualified to give those signatures are members of trade chambers, first-class chiefs, regional councillors, and rural council and municipal councillors. And so those are basically that, including the 30 millions you need to pay for deposit and being a Cameroonian, so, and 35 years of age at least.
Minimum.
Now,
and of course, having been resident in the country for at least I think
continuously 12 months
continuously. So
okay.
That one is important too.
When you hear him speak and you get the names, do you have the impression that each of the 28 candidates fulfilled the responsibilities which the law prescribes of them, or some of them, or the Elections Cameroon just received the files, and that scrutiny on who qualifies will be dealt with later?
No, it's true that having the function of the reception body in ELECAM is just to receive the files, okay, and tick. We have received this, tick, tick. After that, they issue you a receipt for that. I mean, the candidate depositing. Now, from there, the files will be taken. The pile of files will now be taken to the constitutional. I mean, to the not the constitutional
electoral board.
The electoral board to verify
the regularity.
Yes, the regularity of the various candidates. It's there now that they'll, try to discover who is lacking in the document
from the face value, right?
Yes.
Not the legal implications of the document, but the face value that you've met all the conditions, and that's if you need 10 documents, all the 10 documents have been filed in, right? No,
the electoral board rules on qualification. Have you met all the conditions that a candidate is supposed to meet? If you don't meet, they put up a list of those who have fulfilled the conditions, and this is put up 60 days before the election. Okay. That's the situation. Now, if you are not comfortable, you can seize the Constitutional Council to correct the errors of the electoral board if there are any.
So what's the role of the Constitutional Council at this point, after this process?
Yes, where we are now, the Constitutional Council is not yet coming in the sense that if you want to look at the electoral process, you will start by looking at the functioning of ELECAM, the Elections Management Organ. The law is to the effect that ELECAM is made up of two main organs. That's the Directorate and the Electoral Council. Electoral Board, I'm sorry. And if you look at the attributes of the two organs, you understand the process of depositing files and then publication of the list of qualified candidates. Because if you look at Article 22 of the law on election with regards to Electoral Board, it says that the Electoral Board has the role to supervise the day-to-day activities of elections, registration of candidates, and then most importantly, the directorate. I mean, talk about the directorate. And the Article 26 clearly stipulates that the directorate has a role of receiving files of candidates and channeling to the electoral board. So the directorate does not verify whether all the documents are available. They don't verify whether the candidate is qualified. Now, when you look at the attributes of the electoral board, you were talking about Article 10 of the law, which now is clearly stipulates that the electoral board now verifies on the regularity of files of candidates. It is the electoral board now that scrutinizes and publishes a list of those who are qualified. The electoral board meets when elections have been convened. They meet after every 15 days. So I think that is what is actually happening. So as from the date of convening of the electoral college, they have to meet every 15 days, and to be able to, after receiving the dossiers from the files from the directorate, they are now scrutinizing and verifying point by point, candidate by candidate, if there's a candidate does not qualify, if there's a document that's lacking, and it is after the publication of their list that now disgruntled candidates would now seize the Constitutional Council for pre-electoral dispute.
Okay, which means the Constitutional Council does not come in until a candidate files in a petition or a complaint.
Yes, at this level, the Constitutional Council starts operating after they receive a petition. It's true, the list of candidates are forwarded to them by the Electoral Board, but they start actually functioning after receiving the petitions from the candidates. They later on have a more bigger role after the voting, but before the voting, the only activity they have is that of entertaining election disputes and then ruling on them.
However, they equally receive a copy of the file that is deposited at the
Elections
Cameroon.
Okay.
Yes.
So the functions of the Constitutional Council will see them more towards the end of the process.
Yep, after voting.
Now, when you look at the competing candidates, for the very first time, we have 2 or 3 independent candidates.
Three,
which presupposes that they have been able to gather the 300 signatories from across the country. What does that signal to you? If it's regular that they got that?
Well, I think it is very easy to get those figures.
You say it's easy?
It is.
Okay.
Because if normally you have your antennas in every subdivisional headquarters.
Given that you don't have a political
But you
party.
should. You cannot be running for the presidency where you don't have people in all the subdivisions of the country, except that you want to have votes only from a particular area. I think that if I were to run, I should, for the past 2 or 3 years, have been doing a lot of groundwork to emerge at the last minute, because it was clear that we were going to have elections this year.
Okay.
So I think, to me, if you cannot have 300 or 30 of such signatures from one region, so why are you paying 30 million when you will not be able to have up to 1% to have back the 30 million?
Okay, unless you
my concern is with the conditions. You don't have councillors. How do you succeed in getting their signatures across the national territory? Am I giving you a bullet to shoot me with? Because if I have a councillor, my party is presenting a candidate, and I'm signing for a different candidate to go and stand, I think that I might even have a problem with my party. So that's where I see the difficulty. And secondly, how many first-class chiefs do we have that can easily, come in to give their signatures? And how would that be interpreted? And most of them are partisan. So I think that it is very difficult, and
it's a problem.
I'll be very surprised if we succeed in having an independent candidate. We discussed that
in the long run.
Yes, we discussed that during one of our workshops on electoral disputes in Cameroon. I think that was a serious issue we talked about. So I'll be waiting to see after the work of the electoral board.
Okay.
Have an independent.
And that sounds
but
quite.
At the same time, we should not forget that giving your signature does not mean that you will be automatically indicted by your parties. That
it goes without saying that it shows some degree of disloyalty to your party.
I'm not sure you are tied to voting for a candidate.
Yeah. We should remember that our electoral system
that's what should be. But the practice in our country is that the case that you need to know what obtains in our country. Sometimes
we should be careful, because what is the situation now? Sometimes you may give it. You just give it, and there will be no repercussion, because some people tend to believe that. Some people tend to believe that the race is already won right beforehand. So, for the sake of democratic show or whatsoever, why not give it? And as I was trying to say, we shouldn't forget that voting is secret. Giving you my signature does not mean that I'll vote for you automatically.
Exactly.
We should be very careful about that too.
But there is something tricky about your position, because when you show overtly that you're against me, you can't show covertly that you're with me. Isn't
what
that?
I think we should understand, the law says, as a councillor, you campaign under the banner of a political party. But once you have been voted, you are a councillor of the nation. You are no longer under the tight strings of your party.
Sure.
It's true. Practically, we say allegiance. Party discipline. For party discipline, you must pay allegiance to your party. But anybody, any councillor that signs for independent candidate has not violated any law.
Yes.
No,
and that one is clear.
We're not talking about violating a law. We are talking about allegiance to a party and what obtains, and our attitude and how we operate in our country.
He's saying that he has not committed any sin.
No, he has not violated any law. I'm saying that no law has been violated.
That's true.
No law has been violated.
We should be a little bit clear on this, right? The national law is above even the party law.
Yeah.
So if within the party law it is stated that you cannot oppose your signature to another independent candidate or whatsoever, the national law is against it, you will not be punished for that.
No party will put a law that's against the Constitution.
Yes, very good.
Yeah.
More to that, there's no party who has that kind of rule.
So will it not be a hypocritical attitude that you behave disloyally to your party, and then
it can
I think it's not hypocritical. I'm saying, and I want to reiterate, once you are voted, you are a councillor of the nation, and you are supposed to, if we take a few steps behind to senatorial elections, councillors are not bound to vote for candidates of their party. They are supposed to vote for the interest of the nation. You can be voted in the council under the banner of a party, but at one point in time, you have a right of appreciation. You could actually see that this candidate could serve the nation better than my president.
What you say sounds theoretical. What's the reality?
That is the reality, and that's what we saw in the Northwest during the last senatorial elections.
In Northwest alone, what else?
Well, I'm just saying that you are not bound to. We've seen in Parliament, CPDM, some CPDM MPs voting against laws that are brought by the CPDM parliamentary group, and nothing happens to them.
Okay. Now, does it surprise you that the opposition has not been able to come up with a candidate? The other day, as many as 20 opposition parties sat at the Yaoundé Hilton and came up with a common release that they were supporting the incumbent.
You know, Joe, I think generally I am very, very disappointed with the opposition in Cameroon. It looks to me like our opposition, I'm sorry to say it, they have been cursed. Because look at Nigeria here. How did Buhari come to power? As we speak, there are a group of prominent opposition leaders, political parties in Nigeria who have already gone into a coalition to chase Buhari from power. What is wrong with our own opposition? If they can form a coalition to face the incumbent, to me, they're just going in to validate the victory of Mr. Biya.
Okay.
So, does that not, to me, they don't have the interest of this nation at heart.
No, does that not translate the omnipotent, or no, that word would be too much, the strongness, the strength of the ruling party and
no, on the contrary,
the incumbent?
On the contrary, Joe, if I were an opposition leader, I think what they would have done, since everybody wants to be president, they would have gone into a coalition, and then they choose a neutral candidate who will run for a 2-year period, and then they organize a free, fair, and transparent election on a level playing ground where all the various parties now, because the problem now is one common enemy, in quote. And so their objective would have been how to dismantle the CPDM from the fangs of, but everybody wants to be a leader, and they know that in their individual capacities, they will not win. And I am saying that the fact that they are going ahead with individual candidates or candidatures and knowing that they will not win, it means that none of those opposition party leaders, they have the interest of this country at heart.
I agree with you. I agree with him that it's a unique idea if the opposition comes up with one candidate. But for me, I look at it from a different angle. For me, I think it is more of an institutional problem and the applicable laws. I think very well that if the election, or let me put like a politician, so if the playing ground is very level, we will really not need independent, a single candidate to the position. We don't really need that. And also, the law also, if the law wanted to help, it would have been made it possible for us to have a 2-round presidential election system, because we have been talking, we are losing sight of the fact that we have Cameroon is a country of serious diversity. So if you look at it, you also see that even in the ranks of the opposition, it is a diverse nature of our culture that is also playing. I want to think so. But I think that if the electoral code was structured differently, we really don't need that.
Joe, I think let me just come in sharply to say that the same reasons you are advancing, those are the reasons that, on the contrary, would have pushed these 27 opposition leaders to form a coalition. Okay. Because, Joe, let me just, 1 minute, please. Yeah. If you look at Tekabalibi, I'm not sure that beyond Bamenda, anybody knows him. I'm not sure that beyond Buya, anybody knows him. So, and you want to go in, will you win in Yaoundé alone and you become president of Cameroon? No. So, if you look at KMER, for instance, there are certain divisional headquarters in this country where they only know the name, they don't know him physically, but there are people who come from there. If they are rallied together, at least his antennas from there will campaign for him. But now that everybody is going, as a separate party, and we all know, whether we like it or not, the CBDM is implanted in almost all the subdivisions of this country. And when you want to go in as an individual candidate, And then tomorrow you come out to start saying that elections are rigged. It makes it difficult for anybody to believe you. So I think that the only way to chase away the civilian from power would have been through an opposition coalition. And since we are not going to have it as it looks likely, I think he said it already that
there is a possibility that they can still
seeing is believing.
After Eleka would have published the list of competing parties.
Sure. Yeah, it's true, but it's true.
Give in to any other party.
Yeah, it's true that in politics nothing is irreversible. Everything is possible in politics. But when we observe down the line, we notice that we talk much about coalition, bringing together, challengers to the incumbent. We always forget that there is this aspect of incumbency advantage that has a fundamental role to play as far as, perpetuating the incumbent in power is concerned. And one thing that I also want to say is that statistics indicate that apart from the 1992 presidential elections, subsequent presidential elections, no political, the combined results of challengers to the incumbent was not up to 50%. Even 30% has never been up to 30%.
20%.
Maximum should be 20%.
It has never gotten to 20%.
So we want to ask ourselves the question, what will be the raison d'etre of a coalition? At least if we rely
when
on
there is a coalition, you give hope to the electorate. There are people who want to know that my vote will not be wasted.
It's quite important.
Yes, if I know that there's a coalition, at least you believe that something can happen. But if you are going to vote somebody who is not only within Yaoundé, you can decide to say, let me be sure that my candidate won, and you vote for whoever you don't even want, because he will win.
Yeah, it's true, but then, we have some of us do have this egoistic political culture. I think that is one of the reasons why, it becomes pretty difficult to come up with a coalition,
unique candidate for the opposition
in our context. And again, some of us on this plateau made mention of the electoral code, perhaps Elections Cameroon, as not trying to set up a level playing ground. But from my own observation, I have the impression that the highest performance, political performance ever scored by a challenging political party or candidate in an election in this country was organized under the Ministry of Territorial Administration. That was in 1992 presidential election.
That's why he's saying
where the SDF,
that was when
remember there was a coalition. Don't forget.
No, it was not an effect.
There was a union for change. They had a union for change. Alfuni was their leader. Or was their candidate. And since then, we have not had such grouping. And that is why we've been having the 2%, 5% against CPDM that we have been having over the years.
Yes, this implies that, of course, somewhere along the line, perhaps election management bodies will have nothing to do when it comes to elections. And it also implies that, we are moving away from the debate of trying to point accusing fingers on the biased nature of election management bodies now to the fact that there is no coalition, there is no strong coalition and all of that. But as I want to say again, we should always note that there is this idea of incumbency advantage which is very strong in our country.
Yes. Yeah. Now, before you respond to some of their preoccupations, there are many people who think that it's the omnipresence of the CPDM party and incumbency advantage, which makes the current situation what it is. Because if you say the NUDP is not going, it's because maybe they feel that why not support where the resources come from?
Without mincing words, Joe, CPDM is the only party you can find in all the subdivisions of this country. And when you look at the battered and lethargic opposition we have in this country, it is only a coalition opposition that can succeed. And I said earlier, with regard to the culture of our country, the various cultures and ethnic groups we have, that it becomes very difficult to have a national cohesion, consensus, because each struggles to keep its own. And that's the same thing with the parties. Unlike CPDM that has representatives of governments and all of that within all the subdivisions, it is rare to find a candidate that has penetrated all the subdivisions of this country. And that's where, as he said, it is only a coalition that can help, to bring some hope to the electorate, to think that because they have come together, I am supporting this particular person who is from my area, from my subdivision, and then that vote will join with what the other person is bringing to be able to beat the incumbent who occupies almost, who has representatives in all the subdivisions.
Okay. Joe, lastly, 1 minute, please.
I'll come back. Let Teke give us the reactions, then we'll come back to you.
Yeah, we have had so many reactions, so many people being very happy with the fact that Press Eye is back on air. I will just take Cletus Stowe, who says that, of course, cultures have been contributing to nation building by the manifestations and promotions. And in the one of politics, Momo Dero says it's like eating soya with a friend that paid for it. And Homeboy Elvis said this is a great show and kudos to the host. But I would like to say clear that it's unchangeable that incumbents will carry the victory at the end of the elections. Emmanuel G says they should extend the time for the program. Cultural diversity will positively or negatively contribute to nation building depending on how statecraft perceived the idea of multicultural societies. But when the government takes advantage of cultural divergence, implements policies of divide and rule, it might not contribute to nation building. This is by statesman Lang, and that is how we end it on our contributions today.
Okay.
Yeah, Joe, I was at Hilton.
Thank you.
I was privileged to be at the Hilton last Friday when a group of 20 political parties came out to declare their support for the CPDM candidate, and they insisted that the reason why they were taking that decision is because they've tried in vain with those who have submitted their files at the LECAM to form a coalition, and so in their opinion, everybody wants to lead, even if they know that they will not be given the opportunity to be president of this country. So everybody.
So and this gives us an impression. This gives us a reading, because the question is, why is a coalition unsuccessful? Why do people? Let's even call them. Some people even call them satellite parties, or satellite candidates. Why is it so? I tend to think that it looks like we are moving towards a situation where power change at the helm of a state or of the state in Cameroon would hardly be earned through elections, but can perhaps only be earned through negotiation. That is the impression I'm having, and that is what I'm reading through when I look at the current political evolution and I try to compare it with past political situations. So that is what I'm trying to.
Okay. There's one aspect that we're also losing sight. I think in Cameroon we have also a very, very serious problem of voter apathy. That one, I think it's one of the, for me. I think
LECAM says that about 6.5 million people have registered.
Well, registration, the apathy is at the level of, can be at the level of registration, and then the apathy could even be on the day of voting. Okay. People are disinterested in the voting mechanism in Cameroon because they think that their votes won't change anything. They think that their vote won't count. And I think that if we start educating and making people understand that even you, at your own small corner, your vote could still create an impact, that will be able to help us. But I think if we stay in this current situation where people have the general impression that, well, if I vote, nothing will change. That's why they don't even bother to leave to go and vote on voting day.
John, when we started this program, we all agreed that France won the World Cup because they came together. They brought so many forces together. That would have been a lesson for the Cameroon opposition.
I think they know that. But the point is, why have they not succeeded in forming an opposition coalition like they did in 1992? That's the big question. Okay. I think that's a question which we'll get one of them to answer any day from now when they would come, especially those of them who are running the race to a 2D. And then there are others who say the incumbent is very powerful and very strong, that his frightening presence would make them make it difficult for them to just come together. And so the best option will be to give him their votes.
Well, let them just go and legitimize his victory.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, for coming. We're looking forward to being with you again same time next week when we'll be on with another in the series. Much is happening in the country indeed. Until then, have a nice time on CRTV and stay with us if you can. Good day.